Today on Locked On Rockies, look at that, a winning weekend in St. Louis. Been a long time since that happened.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 7th day of August in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. That's what we say around here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. You can also find us on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Just search Locked On Rockies, or if you need that play-by-play coverage of the Rockies, just search Colorado Rockies, and you will be covered there when it comes to your Rockies coverage, both Locked On and play-by-play. We got a great show for you today. We're going to recap the series in St. Louis, talk about some of the big storylines from that, once again highlighted by another good Austin Gomber pitching performance. The Rockies winning in St. Louis, something they don't do a lot of, especially when it comes to series wins. And a little bit of a philosophy and maybe a speculation into the mind of a particular third baseman and the Cardinals in general. I kind of want to bring back up a topic that we talked about when the Rockies played the Yankees, because I think it's an interesting kind of mindset, philosophy type discussion to have with some of these big name teams, consistently performing teams, where they're at right now and how things have gone. And I think there's nobody more intertwined, at least right now in recent histories, than Rockies and Cardinals. I think now's the time to look at these two teams and compare them a little bit and compare where they're currently at. So we're going to get into that and all sorts of good stuff today. But I wanted to dive into some of the numbers, some of the things that happened with the Rockies here this weekend and what they did here. This is from the Rockies blog here. This is by Kevin Henry here. The Colorado Rockies broke a recent skid in St. Louis over the weekend, grabbing victories on Friday night and Saturday afternoon to secure the franchise's first series win on the road over the Cardinals since 2009. And it's Colorado's first win at Busch Stadium since 2018 on Friday night, snapping a 12-game losing streak in St. Louis. Lots of good. I mean, let's just start there. I mean, that's the road Rockies in a nutshell right there, right? I mean, the issues, and as the Rockies continue to have to navigate and figure things out and get back to relevancy and such and things of that nature, you can't be going on skids like this of any type against any road opponent. Since 2018, the Rockies hadn't won in St. Louis. That was pre-pandemic. That was pre-Arenado trade. That was pre-everyone leaving. I mean, so much has happened, and granted, the Rockies might not have a ton of series in St. Louis, but they play St. Louis just about every season and will do so going forward. I haven't dove too deep into how many other losing streaks, long losing streaks, where this compares to Rockies losing streaks in general, but this is a great step and great start to a really, really tough road trip that has you going St. Louis, Milwaukee, and Los Angeles, but going through the Dodgers. When you looked at this, and when you looked at the schedule, and even with the Cardinals, keep having those factors in mind, having those things in the back of your head, just kind of rehashes and reiterates the road issues for the Rockies. But it was great to see the Rockies in both of their wins not dominate, but handle the games in different ways that road games usually get away from them. In the first game, they go after a good pitcher. They get a ton of runs. I think it was the worst. One of the worst, is easily the worst performance there from Cardinals pitcher. I know I should out of Wainwright against the Rockies. I just wanted to make sure I was getting everything right. Wainwright usually dominates the Rockies. The most of the broadcast was focusing on Wainwright's domination of the Rockies, but the Rockies tagged them, and it wasn't that Wainwright was too super wild. A couple of walks for Wainwright in that appearance, but 7 earned, 9 hits, and still striking out 5. The Rockies, led by a lot of their young guys and 2 major core pieces in McMahon and Rogers. It was good to see every single member of the Rockies lineup get a hit that day against someone that on the road, and that's how you start the series off, and that's how you back up a pitcher who desperately needed a good start, a quality start, and a solid performance in Chris Flexen. And it's not by the definition a quality start. He did give up 10 hits and 3 earned, but he got the strikeouts, and his offense was backing him up from the start. It's the best way to start a road trip for the Rockies is a game like this, but it has to stay consistent, because one of the issues with the Rockies in this series, as we saw after that game, was the offense falling off. Big offensive explosion, 9 runs, long balls, lots of good stuff, 3 runs in 2 games. It's the inconsistencies that continue to pop up with this Rockies team, and especially on the road, highlighted there by the Rockies' 6-2 loss against St. Louis. And the Rockies did get 7 hits in that ball game, weren't able to do a lot of damage. But again, the big thing here, minimum of at least 5 strikeouts by Cardinals starting pitching in all of these games. Zach Thompson had 8 in the finale. But then you kind of look at it in the drastic comparison, going back to the original point of the Rockies winning these games in ways they don't usually win them on the road. In game 1, offense comes alive. Doesn't always happen on the road. But then on the flip side, it's a close game. It's not only just a 1-run ball game, but it's a shutout of the other team at home. It's led by a guy who was thirsted, ready to do damage against his former team and continue to carve out this part of his legacy, this next step of his career, because Austin Gomber contributed yet again for the Rockies, and you could see how much that game meant to him yesterday. And all these games, Austin Gomber has not taken the mound one time this season and not shown energy, emotion, and care for where he's at, and he cares especially for this game here, especially for the Rockies here in this one. And I want to read a tweet here from Patrick Lyons just to kind of set the stage as we dive in yet again here for Austin Gomber's performance against the Cardinals. I'm just gonna start the tweet, and then we're gonna dive into it here after we take a quick break, because I want to set the stage of how good this performance was and how good it had to have felt for Austin Gomber. Austin Gomber entered with a 9.82 ERA against the Cardinals. That's what he entered into the game on Sunday with. Keep that in mind. Think about it. And I know you probably watched the game, but we'll dive more into what Patrick's tweet and what's a big deal about this and what's the big deal for Austin Gomber at this point in the season to be really encouraged by, which has really shifted my perception of Gomber especially. Let's dive more into that here and the change Gomber made to that ERA, that 9.82 ERA against the Cardinals here, coming up in segment number 2. Before we dive into that, though, folks, everyone could use a little bit of help sometimes when it comes to finances. It's what happens. The world's crazy. Things cost a bunch. You might have to do that. Unexpected things might come up here. But if you need a little financial help, Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by setting extra cash advances on time. Finances can be so intimidating. That's why you need Dave. Dave can make managing your money so much easier with an interest-free extra cash advance, fee-free goal tracking, and easy ways to find a side hustle to make more money. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field, and when you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fee. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. You can even build credit when you settle up on time, and millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to make their finances easier. Download Dave today at dave.com/MLB. That's dave.com/MLB. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/MLB. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find us free and streaming on all your devices. You can see us on the YouTube screen. You can see my pit sweat as I'm so hot in my studio as it continues to be the summer and we get fired up talking about the Rockies. You can subscribe, drop your Rockies hot takes. The YouTube comments have been great. We read those. We do live shows. We haven't done them in a bit, but one day we'll get back to them. And we will do. You can find us there, YouTube. Y'all are helping us big time. The support this year has been off the chains incredible here from our everydayers out there. Don't forget to check us out on SiriusXM or the SiriusXM app. All right, before the break, we were talking about Austin Gomber, and I started with the tease here from Patrick Lyons, a tweet from Patrick D. Lyons on Twitter. Austin Gomber entered with a 9.82 ERA against the Cardinals. He left with 6 scoreless for his first win versus St. Louis since the Nolan Arenado trade. Gomber has turned it around with a 3.19 ERA since June 14th, and the Rockies have their first series win in St. Louis since 2009. Boom. Is this a moment that is going to drastically change the outlook and everything for Austin Gomber in the future? I don't know. But what it is showing, and what it continues to show over 2023, is while Gomber has been navigating an incredibly difficult trade, an incredibly difficult mental battle of being part of that, and the influence and the weight and the legacy being caught up in that, Gomber's confidence is continuing to grow. And now he got over one more hump that's been waiting since that trade. We are seeing the best version of Austin Gomber that we have seen since the Nolan Arenado trade. The Rockies would be in a much more difficult spot this season if it wasn't for Austin Gomber and Austin Gomber's turnaround so far this season. And on top of that fact is he's someone that is showing passion, energy, and a drive during these middle of August games that don't mean so much for some of these players, or in the big picture. I shouldn't say for the players. It's their job. They all care. I know that. But Austin Gomber is especially treating those starts and these opportunities against the Cardinals as with a significant amount of importance and with a significant amount of confidence now, because now you can feel better about going after the team. He's still a little nervous yesterday. I mean, I think going after the Cardinals still brings up some emotions for him because he had 3 walks there. First time he's walked 3 batters in a while. The walks creeping up a little bit here in his last 2. Still fighting that scratchy throat. My little nephew doing a number on me there. But when he gave me that cough from last week, but I'm hoping to be much less impacted by it this week. But what encourages me the most about performance for players is how they navigate and go through the season. And while we've seen Gomber start hot and cool off and not bounce back, what we're seeing this year is Austin Gomber getting better and better as the months are going on. He's getting better and better as he continues to go through the season here. And let's just say, take a look here. ERA at the end of April, 7. Drops that down. The ERA has been dropping all season long since the bad start for Austin Gomber, since the tough start for Austin Gomber. The walks all way down by Austin Gomber, especially with a massive drop-off there in July from allowing 8 walks in back-to-back months in June and May to only 2 walks. Unfortunately, he's already exceeded his total of July in just the one game against the Cardinals. But you're seeing the right numbers go down, all while continuing to be someone the Rockies are consistently getting about 6 innings worth of work from, which is exactly what the Rockies need. Since July 7th, and going back actually to June 30th, Austin Gomber has pitched at least 6 innings in all of his starts. In moments that are, it's crucial, even in losses in those situations, even in situations where the offense doesn't back him up all the time, he's still giving the bullpen you're getting consistent starting pitching from Gomber. Something that the Rockies have not had all year, and they have certainly not been getting 6 innings worth of work from their starters throughout the season. So for Gomber to be on this stretch of better ball, better basically everything, home runs down. There was an uptick. There it was in home runs, just by one. He hasn't had a double-digit home run month allowed yet. Actually, the worst when it came to home runs was in June, and in that stretch, it was only 2 ball games that did most of the damage to him, as instead of these stretches where we've seen with Gomber how he started in April and May, there were, in April, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of his 6 starts in April, home run, at least 1 home run given up. 4 out of his 5 starts in May, at least 1 home run given up. So that's still the issues a little bit, but it breaks up in June when it comes to the home run consistently. 3 out of his 6 starts there, and then 3 out of the 5. So not quite fully eliminating it, but eliminating the multi-home run games, which is key for the Rockies and key for Gomber. That's when he gets in trouble. That's when he gets bit. It's just like Kyle Freeland in a lot of ways, where Kyle Freeland, the accuracy and the lack of velocity is a problem. But when Kyle Freeland gets dinged, it's mostly on the long ball. And that's the case for Austin Gomber as well, because he's not afraid to pitch to contact a little bit. But it's those big those big home runs that do the damage. But all of the stats, just about all of the stats for Gomber are up. A decrease in strikeouts last month in July compared to June, but the strikeouts are good. And it was certainly off to a good start with a couple. Would still like to see more striking out from Gomber, but everything is trending in the right direction since the start of the season, and that's the stuff that's encouraging. Because when you're going through and making your marches towards the playoffs, or when you're needing to play your best baseball later in the year, these are the type of stretches you like to see. And if Gomber's capable of doing it now, he should be able to replicate this as he continues to enter the prime of his career. Remember, only 29 years old. So while Gomber is doing all this stuff, while shouldering most of the burden of this starting rotation, being the only Rockies pitcher to stay healthy this entire season so far, there's nothing but props to give to Austin Gomber. And it's still going to be murky with the trade and everything. But to see improvement, to see the opponents struggling against Gomber, to see him becoming better as the year's going on, all good signs for me. Absolutely encouraged. And I'm glad I'm eating my words a little bit. I'm glad I'm building more confidence in Austin Gomber, because going into this year, I didn't know what we were going to get from Austin Gomber. I didn't know what was going to happen with Austin Gomber. But that's a great performance from him yesterday, facing traffic in multiple situations, facing multiple issues in a tight ball game where the offense isn't helping him out, which has also been the case sometimes for Austin Gomber. It was really, really great to see, and really, really encouraging to see as well. So got to give my guy Austin Gomber's props. I want to just kind of mention how big of a deal. I think that's it's not a big point in the season overall for some, but for Gomber especially, it's probably one of the biggest moments, if not the biggest moment of his season so far. Really, really great stuff to see. Some other stuff you might be curious about. ERA down, monthly ERA in July was 3. He cut his ERA basically in half from his monthly performances there of in June and May of having over 6 ERAs and over 7 ERA. In April, Austin Gomber has been able to continue to allow less and less earned runs there, going from a 20. He cut his runs allowed in half as well. Obviously, because his ERA is cut in half, allowing 20 earned runs in June to only 10 in July. No earned runs in the start yesterday. Already starting August off on the right foot. So good for Austin Gomber, good for the Rockies, and a couple more. One more thing here on Austin Gomber. A couple more things. Some numbers here from the series here. Kevin Henry, going back to the Rockies blog here. 8. That's the total number of batters that Colorado Rockies starting pitcher Austin Gomber has walked in his last 10 starts. That number also includes 3 walks he issued on Sunday, the most he allowed since walking 3 on June 3rd in a 2 2/3 inning at Kansas City. Continues a strong stretch for Gomber on the mound, as his 2 walks in July were tied for the second fewest in baseball in the month, behind Ross Stripling's 1 walk. Let's see. Right-handed batters are batting 128 against reliever Matt Koch this season, and that in right-handers currently batting 5 for 39 against Koch and his relief appearances, and Koch got another 0 spot on the board there. And Nolan Jones here, I like these 3 numbers that was picked out. 455. That's the batting average for Nolan Jones in his first road series with the Rockies in St. Louis, going 5 for 11 against the Cardinals with a pair of doubles mixed in there as well. With his double on Sunday, Jones has now reached base safely in 40 of his 49 starts for Colorado. Wonderful acquisition there and wonderful trade, I think, for the Rockies to bring in Nolan Jones. And great to see, hey, hopefully Nolan Jones is going to be the one that sets up more success for the Rockies in St. Louis. So, all right, let's get into our philosophy mindset type of question. Get it kind of a little more what ifs and away from some of the numbers and stats here. Coming up in segment number 3. But before we do that, want to tell you about our friends at BetterHelp. And BetterHelp is a spot for you to get a little bit more clarity, maybe a little bit structure, maybe a little bit more organization, or a place to just talk about what's going on in life. Because sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while helping you navigate life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. Check it out if you're thinking about therapy or thinking about just trying out talking to someone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. Want to thank you for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. Want to thank you for checking us out on your favorite streaming services and SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. You can take us with you there, or get all your Colorado Rockies play-by-play action there on the SiriusXM app. And check it out there. And check out the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. You can also check out Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, keeping you covered here in the Colorado sports landscape. And I wanted to bring this I wanted to close out our conversation about this St. Louis series, again, with kind of the same type of conversation we had about the Yankees. Are you more confident in St. Louis or the Rockies? Who's going to make the playoffs next? Most likely it's St. Louis. They had 2 MVP candidates last year. But I think what we're seeing with the Cardinals this year is that when you have a reliancy at one position for so long, when you have always high expectations, when you have your, make certain moves, and when you're in a winnable every year division, I just have to help but wonder if this year is finally showing that the Cardinals way, the Cardinals process, the Cardinals philosophy isn't working as well anymore. Like I said, will it surprise me next year if the Cardinals are right back in the thick of things, right back in the mix, right back in a match for the Central? No, it won't at all. I mean, that's how it goes. They have a long-standing history of success. They're a popular team. They have all these things, but much like the Yankees, it's kind of asking the question, so what? You trade for Arenado, you do these things, and since the Arenado trade, really, what have you done? I mean, the players have performed well. There's been postseason stuff, but not necessarily dominant or one that makes you. I mean, last year was a little different because they got hot at the right time. They have made the playoff. They made the playoffs 4 straight years, including making it all the way to the championship series there in 2019. So, of course you're more confident in the Cardinals. Of course you are. But is this the year where the machine starts changing? Is this the year where things start catching up with them? Because this isn't the first time they've been through a little bit. They might be entering a bit of a drought, 2015 to 2019. There in postseason runs. But it also follows kind of a similar pattern, perhaps. It's got to happen more than once for it to be a pattern, right? 2011 to 2015, 4 straight appearances in the postseason, nothing for 4 years. 4 straight appearances, not making the playoffs this year. So, if this was the Rockies, you would love this. If the Rockies were making the playoffs every 4 years in a row and then a couple of years down in the playoffs consistently, I think we would be really, really encouraged by this. But if you're the Cardinals fans, I think you get a little restless when you're talking about postseason impact and postseason performance, especially when this team hasn't made it past the wild card series in 3 years. Since losing to the Nationals in 19, they've been bumped out in the first round by the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Phillies in 20, 21, and 22. Good teams, of course. But something to consider there, especially when you look at it, and obviously the playoffs much different at these points, but championship series is where they're going. World Series is where they're going. The last time they found themselves battling it out in the wild card series before that, the 2020 stretch was back in 2012. Other than that, they've been playing division series and World Series and those things. So, is the Cardinal Way enough in 2023? Is it enough? It might be enough to get you into the dance, but they ain't staying very long. So, when we kind of think about who are we more confident? Of course, just like we said with the Yankees, more confident in the Cardinals. But when you kind of look in and you look in the shortcomings, it makes you wonder at least a little bit. Especially with this team only being a wild card team in the last 3 times they've made the postseason and now not making the playoffs. How long can you afford to keep some of these players until you have another season like this where you're entering a full-on are we rebuilding, are we not mode? So, I don't think the Cardinals will ever fully embrace like the rebuild thing. I don't necessarily know if they need to, but I think the Cardinals are looking at this season at a moment where it's time to reestablish that identity and hopefully not go through the stretch here. I mean, if the Cardinals will run out of a lot of valuable time with some of their key players, especially the ones on the corners, if this season starts off another 4-year gap of not making the postseason. Will it happen? I don't know. I think the Cardinals got a lot of talent. They got active front office. We'll see what happens. But just kind of some interesting, an interesting look here at the Cardinals, and especially and in comparison to the Rockies, I'd happily be making the wild card every year and making as many consistent playoffs and going to as many postseasons as the Cardinals have. So there you go. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us here on your favorite streaming service. Maybe you're on YouTube, maybe you're wherever. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and checking us out here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Don't forget, Locked On Rockies on YouTube. That's where you can see the video podcast. That's where you can fire off your Rockies hot takes in the comments and lots more. Check it out there. And like I said, go check out the Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs podcast for more Colorado sports coverage. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.